Well, hi guys, welcome to episode 7, and it is indeed that time of the week again that I get so excited. I always look forward to Sunday nights now, where we are going to be recapping and breaking down, delving into the works that was episode 7, the Noatic Part 2 from Moriarty the Patriot, one of my probably absolute favourite animes this season. It's definitely battling it out for the second place of best anime right now, so depending on how this season ends, I'm going to be very excited to see if it can top the my anime list in my opinion. In case you guys want to know what my favorite animes of this season were and what I'm going to be watching next season, make sure you are subscribed, because coming out at some point quite soon, I will be releasing my winter 2021 anime list, where I will be telling you guys what am I watching, what do I look forward to, and what am I going to be releasing YouTube breakdowns on, because I'm very excited to be doing that. And this does mark the end of nearly the second season where this channel has now been going, breaking down animes. So I'm quite proud of myself. It feels like a little tiny milestone just for me. As always, I'll be promoting the Discord channel, so make sure you guys, if you are on Discord or you have just found me, becoming a member of the Discord channel will mean that you get a notification whenever the videos go up. You get a little notification that will tell you what I'm releasing on. You'll also be able to see if I have any delays, so I will announce any delays on the channel as well. So a great place to be. I intend to be building from it in the future as the channel gets bigger. There's not a lot going on the channel. Just use it as your kind of little indicator that something's gone up, or just a chance to chat to me, ask questions. There is a Q&A section. I'm generally floating around. I'll at least check on it every so often if I have a day off or not. Let's get back to it. And I have less notes than last week, which is good. I've actually got less historical stuff to talk about, but I've got a lot more techniques that the anime has employed this episode. So it's a very different episode, hopefully, from last week, where I blabbered on a bit because I had a fair bit of history stuff I wanted to get down. So this week we should be looking at a slightly lighter episode where we're not going too historical into it. The open essentially is just a recap, so I don't even need to talk about the open. There we are, save some time already. It's just a recap, making sure that you know what we've already seen part 1-wise. We get the open again of him hunting somebody. We see the murder of Thomas, which ends with Enders being discovered by William Moriarty. That is where we left off, and we are going to come right back into Enders trying to turn the situation, because you don't know who you're talking to, mate. You think that William's going to believe this? Really? Where he turns the situation and says, Thomas attacked me. And he's trying to pull the whole self-defense thing. And obviously we know, Moriarty knows. William knows everything. Obviously he essentially set it all up in a very clever manner. So we know he knows. It's very interesting to watch the situation unfold with that knowledge in mind, that we know that Moriarty knows. And we get to see William playing detective, and he's like, well, if he's a thief, I don't see any signs of struggle or any signs of your room being ransacked. There's no proof that you caught him in the act or anything. And that knife is really expensive, so it must belong to you. Because obviously he's trying to get this guy a little bit panicked. The whole situation in the end is trying to kind of unravel Ender's mind and make him a little bit more and more unstable, which I think I ended up concluding at the end, where I'll get to my little mini breakdown at the end, where he pulls the whole, you're a proud nobleman, I want to believe you. Him saying this leads him into a bit of security. He's leading him into a false sense of security. It's like, I believe you, I trust you, you're a nobleman, I'm going to try and lure you in, you can trust me, I'm here. He very cleverly goes, this is going to be very hard to prove from a third party standpoint. So anybody else looking in on a situation isn't going to believe you, because obviously you're just a nobleman like I believe you. Where he very cleverly nudges him and goes, we need to discard the body, let's put it into the ocean. And it's a bye-bye Thomas moment. Initially, I feel so proud. The more I watch these episodes, the more I start picking up on things. I start to pick up on the plot ahead of schedule. I don't know if that's a sign of my brain being good or just the anime just being really, really good at dropping you little hints. We did see a little moment which seems to be played off, and I figured it would turn out to be a bit more, and it was kind of played off, where as they throw the body over, William knocks almost into Enders. He kind of looks like he stumbles. As a little note I've put, is this going to be important later? So I've even taken a little screenshot. This doesn't turn out to be anything, so it definitely didn't come back to bite him in the butt. He didn't plant something on him. I can maybe hedge a bet that maybe there's a bit more in the manga, there's a little tiny bit, because talking to you guys has definitely shown me that after a episode that goes by, it's interesting to see the little bits that you guys say I've missed. And sometimes it's something tiny, but you're like, oh, that would have been nice to see, or that would have explained that situation a little bit better. Maybe this is that kind of thing where it was going to be explained, but they ended up just cutting it. William just knocks into him very gently. Or I could maybe grasp at straws and say he knocked into him to try getting him to look at him instead of what was going on down below, because obviously down below Fred and Moran have caught the body. Perhaps I can grasp at straws and say that's probably what it was. We get a very nice shot of the Noatic during the daylight. I'm an 80% fan of this ship. I do like the look of it. Albert is talking to his fanatic friend, and they are talking about the upcoming performance. So the performance is now tonight. He talks about the fact that he's going to be sitting near Anders. Then this cuts to almost a mirroring image of last week. We see Sherlock looking at the Giselle poster. And obviously last week we saw William looking up at the Giselle poster. I obviously gave you guys a breakdown last week of a rough plot for Giselle. I do wonder, hey Sherlock, did you watch my video last week? Are you considering what I said as well? Do you too see the irony of this play being performed? Would Sherlock be a fan of my channel? Many questions I have to ask. I still think it was such a good choice for them to pick Giselle, because obviously at the end, Thomas apparently, if you guys can't see it, but I'm air quoting right now. He comes back from the dead. Air quote, air quote, air quote. So it's very nice to see, because obviously that's what happens in the play. And as soon as the play comes on and we see Giselle costume is amazing. I love it. I knew immediately it was the death scene. Giselle dies at the end of Act 1, which they obviously bang on, get it correct. They haven't mucked around with the play itself. And it's very clever because the entire second act is about Giselle's ghost. And obviously I told you last week, Giselle's the one who kills herself because she's in love with a count. And it all goes horrifically wrong because the hunting party then reveals that he's actually engaged. She kills herself in a very fit of madness. Again, so ironic. I absolutely love the choice of play. But it's very nice to see that this all tied in quite nicely. We do see Enders from his box seat. Box seats aren't actually the greatest place to see the performance. So as much as they were very expensive, they aren't the best place to see the performance. Because of where you are, you see one side of the stage, one side only. So I love theatre. I'm a massive theatre goer, and especially with things like Phantom of the Opera. I would never really be persuaded to buy a box seat. I do like sitting in the stalls mainly. So apparently I'm common riffraff, according to Enders anyway. Act 1 has ended, and the ballet fanatic, which we have seen, he decides that he's going to go and leave Enders alone because he wants to go and sit in the front row. He's got a space saved from him by a friend. I initially thought that was Albert. It probably is Albert's doing that. He's moved him on purpose. But I was like, oh, he's going to go and sit with Albert. But he's not, because Albert is technically opposite. He's watching the whole spectacle from the opposite box. I just find that this is very clever because obviously he's removed himself. The guy has now gone. Enders is now alone, which is perfect. All set up, all planned very nicely. The guy is literally going to get that front row seat to what's about to happen in Act 2, which is very, very literal. There's a lot of little literal moments where I say something and it literally happens. It's quite nice. Where Enders obviously scoffs as he leaves, saying you're going to be like surrounded by the riffraff. And I'm like, in the stalls? Are you sure about that? The stalls are generally the most expensive place. They're very expensive, and even to today's modern standards, the place where you'll have to pay like 90 plus quid for any decent theatre ticket in the stalls. It's just a bit odd that he's calling the people in the stalls riffraff. That's technically where more higher class people would sit. William appears into the box where Enders is, and this is what starts it. So William is now here to knock our boy into position for Act 2. He starts to make things a little bit spicy, and I love how spicy he does it, where he goes, are you sure you killed that man? Again, in my notes, irony, Giselle Act 2, Giselle's ghost comes back from the dead, where he hands him a pair of opera glasses. I've actually got a Victorian set. Annoyingly, mine were mother of pearl. They fell on the floor, and the mother of pearl has broken off. Down, lo and behold, Thomas is sitting in the stalls. Enders starts to panic, and it's just William's face. William just pulls some amazing faces, and I think a lot of the time, most of my screenshots are just William's pulling a fantastic face. I'm like, I'm taking that. That's mine. As Enders runs off in a panic, it's that final line that William says, off you go to the second act. Oh, I mean, it is part 2 Noatic. It is technically the second act. I love the fact that as well, it's a split episode and we've got the second act here and the second act in the show. This anime is so good. And we get a green filter. So obviously I have spoken a lot about the red filter. By now, you guys, if you've been watching me from the start, you should be very knowledgeable on what the red filter means. But now there is a green filter. I did notice it last week. I held off talking about it. Most of the meanings for green is quite ironic. It's almost the opposite of what they're using it for. Initially, green means envy. It's jealousy. It also stands for, wait for it, balance and rebirth. And if you saw my last episode, you've heard me highlight two of the themes for Moriarty the Patriot, which are rebirth, and again, it is this idea of balance. The ironic side of green is it represents self-control and it's soothing. Everything that Enders is not basically right now. So that's initially why I held off talking about it, because it did seem like it didn't fit. But it kind of does in a very ironic manner. We see Enders heading to the stalls where the body or Thomas has vanished, the ghost has gone. And in a very desperate attempt, he even goes, I will pay anybody to tell me about that man. Where somebody's like, oh no, he left, he just went that way. Which is perfect because we can see how it's all falling into place. We know he's naturally going to go and follow the guy, so he's now being led into position, into perfect position. It's so easy to lead this guy. We see him chasing off after the ghost of Thomas, and we can see he's getting very frantic. Now I'm going to start going into a bit of more of a breakdown about what the anime is doing technique-wise, where it's annoying CGI, but it works. The way they use the CGI works, where the camera starts to frantically swing backwards and forwards running down this corridor, which starts to show the franticness of Enders. And we also start to see his mind starting to become more unstable because the camera at work becomes quite unstable as he runs. So it's very clever to see them trying to show us through the work of cameras and the work of the actual shot itself, the mind state of the actual actor on the character, which now is on stage, which is Enders. Act 2 begins, and we do get a little bit of history this week. Probably the only thing I get to talk about is the speaking tubes. We get a scene of William standing, getting a lowdown from Moran, telling him that Enders is now heading into position along the planned course. The speaking tube is often, and this anime has done a fantastic job of showing it. It is a brass tube, and it's kind of connected by pipes and little kind of tubing where it would lead one room to another, allowing you to speak to somebody in the other room without having to get up. Another system you would see used often in the big houses, any big house with servants, you will see them using a bell system. So you will see them ringing bells to go, the master in his drawing room wants to summon me, he wants something, so I must go to him. If you ever come to the UK, guys, and you do go to any of our numerous amounts of big houses which are set up, often run by the National Trust or the English Heritage, there'll often be a cafe, and it's generally always put in the serving quarters because it's big enough to hold it. And they often leave it in the same state, obviously a nice historical state, and generally around the edge of the room you will see the bells, and you get to see all the bells all lined up. I think most of the time the bells do still work. So that's quite a little interesting fact if you do come to the UK. So that is the only bit of history that comes up, I'm afraid. There's no more history in this episode. No food either, so you don't get any of my food breakdowns or my history breakdowns. Backstage now, where I've put it as Fred. If it is Moran, I was 50-50 at one point. I did think it was Moran, but we technically hear Moran talking to William. So I was like, probably, most likely, it's Fred who did the costume. I was a little bit uncertain at one point. So I was like, is it? But I do think it is just Fred wiping off his makeup. And it is the second time we have seen quite a nice little costume special effect change of just seeing how well they pull it off at trying to get another character to dress as another character. Enders ends up being lured to the body of Thomas, which is on the ground. Obviously, the body's gone nowhere. The body is still dead. It's been dead for like a night now. In his rage, at this point, he is more and more unstable as we speak. He just starts to kick off and he starts kicking the body, and he starts to question his own self. Is he actually dead? Because we see him he's gone mad. Enders is going more and more mad and insane by the moment. Overlooking the entire situation is Moran. Fred is the one who technically makes the stage go up, so it could be 50-50, guys. I'm just uncertain. To be fair, you guys made me feel a little bit better last week when I said that I felt stupid for thinking William was Lewis at one point, just because the hairstyle changed. Maybe you guys can be making me feel better this week that you two got a little confused if it was Moran or Fred, who was where at what point. But I do think I've got it kind of right with it being Fred dressed up and Moran just kind of being the one letting Moriarty know what's going on and overseeing everything. And the stage is lit. The actor is now in place, and he signals for Fred to raise up the stage. Literally, he is now on stage. He is so distracted with stabbing this corpse, he doesn't even notice that the floor starts to move upwards. And we perhaps get the best use of colour popping, perhaps in the entire anime season so far. Is this next sequence is just fantastic. He is raised up onto stage. Immediately we get our colour pop kicking in, that very high contrast, the dark shadows. We get the red of the lights all in the room. We get the yellow of his hair really standing out. We've got this very contrasted shadow, so the eyes of the audience really stick out. Everybody's eyes just sticks out. It makes for a very unnerving scene. The scene feels awkward. The scene feels a little bit uneasy because of how dark and these shadows don't look right. The colour doesn't look right. It's a very nice use of colour popping. Enders looks up to see the entire stage is watching him. He's on stage. And we also get a very nice use of silence. Up until this point, we have had music. As soon as he works out that he has been seen, he works out that he's now on stage, everyone's looking, we get silence. And this silence lasts for a good minute. And it is jarring. It's very jarring to have all this music playing and then suddenly it comes to a halt. There's no sound. The only thing that breaks the silence and continues the storyline is the actress playing Giselle screaming to break the silence, going, "Oh my god, he's killed him." And that is what kicks it all off. The scene is still tinged. When we notice our actress screaming, the edges of the scene are red because we are still in this mode. Whenever the filter gets thrown up, we are in this murder mode. If it was a game and it suddenly got to the violence and the boss is right there, the screen would change. We're in that kind of boss mode where the murder is going down or the crime is taking place. The audience starts to yell literal bloody murder. If they have witnessed the crime, they start obviously shouting about how he's murdered it. It's not a play. Apparently there was the rumour anyway that Enders had hunted people on his own ground. So people already vaguely knew. So there were these rumours that he was doing it. I mean, he's a noble. He has to have people working for him. People must, get the hint that something isn't quite right. The audience starts to grow more and more angry, which is very clever because this is what William wanted from the start, right at the beginning when he announced his actual big plan. This rage unifies the audience regardless of what class they are. This is kind of the point. This is showing you what this all leads to. This is what William wants. And Enders is just absolutely bonkers by this point. And he's just off his rocker. He even just announces to the world, he's like, this isn't a human life, And he starts to go on and on. And I've written this line down, not thinking it's going to come back. And this line I've written down actually turned out to be a very important line. And I'll read it and you guys know exactly why. And it's, "What's so wrong with killing the lights of this commoner?" It shows how twisted he is, obviously bringing out the bad guy. In case you didn't know he was the bad guy, this is the bad guy. He feels no remorse for killing people, and he doesn't even see this man as a person. To absolutely everybody, including us, the audience, Enders just looks absolutely stark raving bonkers. He looks like a complete loony right now, because he's just screaming about this. He starts getting into a bit of a fight with the ballet fanatic in the audience, and he obviously says, you look down on them too, you're a noble. Where he goes, "No, you're just a cold-blooded murderer," where we see him go in to stab him. He literally launches off the stage to go stab him, blocking the attack with that colour-popped blue hair. Sherlock comes to the rescue, showing off some of those fighting skills that we heard about last episode. And as Enders hits the floor, colour popping ends. He is literally kicked back into reality. So we see that's the end of the colour popping. The sequence is back. We've got to go back to reality now, where we see Enders running off, being chased by the ship's crew, the staff. That is when Sherlock sees the body. And because I'm just amazing, not really, but yes, I have written I got notes. Obviously, I take notes during the anime, so I use it as a script, so I know that I'm not missing anything. I've written right here, surely Sherlock is going to be able to tell from the body that this body is not fresh. And I've even put underneath, is this a loose thread? Is this, one of those little slip-ups that William is going to slowly make bit by bit? And obviously Sherlock's going to figure it all out eventually in an overarching plot. Very, very happy to see that Sherlock did actually do this, and they do actually go back to it right at the end in that amazing end sequence. So very glad that it wasn't just me thinking that in my head and it didn't go nowhere, because we do see him studying the body, and the last line is, "That's interesting." And he knows. He just knows, guys. He knows it's a setup. He knows. He's just Sherlock. Sherlock knows. And that's when that ends. So initially I was like, oh, they're not going to go back to it. Are they just going to end with that little interesting line? Where the filter comes back. And it's just an amazing bit of animation. It's an amazing little trick that the anime studios used, where we've got these overlays now. So we've got Enders running away from the crew. And as he's running, we see the red filter of the entire open plays again. So the open of the man running through the forest being hunted by Enders is played 3 times during these two episodes. And this now is cut and overlaid over him. So we now see the tables turning. The tables have flipped. This time Enders is the one being hunted. So we see the man's face swapped out for Enders. And then we see that it's not dogs pursuing him like it was initially in the open. It's the crewmates that are pursuing him. It is such a clever little flip out. And everywhere Enders turns, he runs into the crew. We see him becoming more and more exasperated. He is more desperate, more and more frantic. We start to hear his breathing start to kick off, and we can see how desperate he's getting. We might hate this character. This is a nasty character they have created. But kudos, guys. We need to respect the voice actor for the work he has done on his character. Enders ends up the mast, because of course he did, where we can see he's gone completely mad. It did give me quite Macbeth feels, where it felt very Macbethy, where obviously he goes mad in the end. He starts to see the ghost of Duncan, where he's murdered Duncan and he sees the ghost. Very similar to that, where he's obviously seen the ghost of Thomas, and it's led him to this moment. He literally uses the meta. Everybody now has no choice but to look up to me, because I am up on the, he's higher than literally. And it's just that manic laughter where suddenly, as soon as I saw that bullet hit his foot, I was like, oh my God, it's Moran. So clever. Moran shoots him in the foot, which sends him sliding down the mast a little bit. And again, we need to take a moment, guys, to appreciate Moran's amazing shooting skills. I do it a lot if you follow my Golden Kamui videos. We always take a moment to appreciate Ogata's sniper skills. So, a moment to appreciate the sniper skills of Moran. Also, how good does he look in that uniform? Fantastic. I do like that the sun is starting to set, and obviously the sun is now setting on the stage for Enders. It's now nearly over, nearly done. Enders goes to go and grab for a rope in his kind of frustration, his terror, because obviously he's been shot in the foot, where Moran shoots him in the hand, and this is it. It sends him falling. And it just reminded me of a little line that the higher position you get to, that the higher you are up in the chain, the further you have to fall. And that fall is magnificent, where he falls in front of everybody, because by this point everybody's on deck looking at him. He spots the Moriartys. He sees Fred joining them, and he realizes a bit too late the situation and how it is, where he falls into the sea. Thus ends the life of Enders, and he will not be missed. We will not miss him one bit. We do get a cutscene with Albert and some red roses. And we know me, I love breaking down flower symbolism. If you followed me across seasons from Koi to Producer, and if you did actually follow me from Koi to Producer last season, thank you so much. It's people like you who have slowly followed across season to season who are going to be the people who really do help me grow as a channel. So thank you so much. A big little nod to you guys there. Hopefully, if I have picked you up this season, I will see you again next season. So make sure you are keeping an eye out for that video when it goes up. Back at the Moriarty house, let's see the after effects. Let's see what happened after. We see Lewis. Oh, I missed my boy Lewis. I haven't seen you, Lewis. And it does seem more inferred that he might have done some bits and we don't actually know what he was doing. He was just kind of, as you guys said, he was left at home. My boy. A moment for Lewis, because I missed him. Moran is greeted, and he's obviously come back from the town, where he's asked about the buzz from the town. What is everyone essentially saying on the streets? Everybody is talking about the murder upon the stage of the maiden voyage of the luxury liner, and there are also rumours starting to spread about the man who hunted people. And most important to note, it's the MPs in the House of Commons that this rumour has reached. Again, if you've hit the House of Commons, you've hit big time. William even says that they are probably going to be investigating the hunting grounds quite soon to unearth the bones. And he says, once that happens, the commoners will be outraged. There's going to be a big outcry when that happens. This is what we were talking about right at the start when he announced his big plan to obviously start shaking the way people think. The nobleman who was hunting people for sport is going to rattle around the House of Commons. It's going to rattle around all the people who have obviously started to speak. People may not have even been there at the event, but it's going to start making people think. It's going to get people starting to think a little bit, which is what the overall plan is. So it's very good to see the after effects, and I think the after effects, if anything, are most important to see what has been the result of the big setup. How has this actually aided Moriarty in his big overarching plan? Moran ends up ending on the line that the big operation required a very big clean-up to make sure there were no loose ends, when Moran says, "I'm very impressed at how smooth everything ran." And then probably the most important key point comes out, which is the point I obviously mentioned before, where William says everything did go to plan, but there's a but, everybody. There is a but, and it's Sherlock. Of course, it's our boy Sherlock. It has to be. Where William says, "I don't even know how much of a threat he poses, so I need to start making inquiries into him." And it turned out, whilst they were leaving Noatic, once we had finally made port back in the UK, Sherlock goes and finds William, and he says, "What a fan," he starts to remark on what a show. William playing, obviously, coy, and he's like, "I'm not much of a ballet fan, but it was good." And Sherlock goes, "Well, that's not what I'm talking about, is it? I'm talking about that dramatic murder in full view of the audience." And he says, "It was no ordinary killing." Where William's all like, "Are you saying something was off, something was contrived?" Of course he saw it, guys. Of course he picked up on it. It's Sherlock. He notes that the body died the night before because of one teeny little factor, rigor mortis, and the fact that the blood obviously would be darker and it's probably like clotted by that point. Not to talk about it too much. I am very squeamish when it comes to real life blood. Happy to see it in anime, but I don't actually get squeamish at anime. It's real life. I'm okay dealing with my blood. I just can't see other people's blood, apparently. Very, very selective phobia of blood, me. Where he says that man did not die on stage. William even praises him for his knowledge of forensic pathology, where he does say it's very common knowledge in France because the Britain itself is behind as a country. Sherlock says, "The thing I found most interesting at the moment when he was seen by the audience, it's the fact that he said a certain line." And I literally picked up on that line and mentioned it before, not even thinking it would come back. And it is the same line. It's the, "What's so wrong about killing a commoner?" Because that sentence itself makes that conscious effort to say, "I know he's already killed him." It says, "I've already killed this guy. This guy is dead." He knows the guy is dead. So as we see, it doesn't add up. I love it. I love it so much. Sherlock breakdowns, just hearing how he works it all out is just probably the favourite part of being a Sherlock Holmes fan, is seeing him figuring it all out at the end, getting it all together. And this is essentially what he is doing, where he says, "What led the Count to believe the corpse was alive? I believe a third party led him to it." Well, yes, you are 100% correct. Did anyone else just get that pang of excitement hearing Sherlock basically be 100% correct and be on the mark with this one? He says the whole ship was a stage for this entire incident. Oh, I love it so much. Sherlock knows. He absolutely 100% knows. And I like the fact that we get a literal focus in on a red flag. This is a red flag. This should be a red flag to William. Sherlock, he's your red flag. You need to be careful, mate. Where I do like the fact that William tries to play innocent but intrigued. So he's like, "Oh, to what end do you think this would have been?" Sherlock does say, "I don't know the motive or plan." So he doesn't exactly know why the murder occurred. Why did someone went to such lengths? So he can't figure out the end goal. But he just definitely knows that there was something up. And he even says, "I did some digging before leaving the ship, and I didn't find a single thing that could be used as proof or evidence." So Sherlock, maybe you shouldn't have probably said that bit. So many questions, where we get an amazing Sherlock line where he says, "When you eliminate every other possibility, that which remains, however improbable, must be the truth." Oh, I love it so much. This reminds me of how much I love the Sherlock Holmes books. I love them. They are very engaging to read, and I haven't read one in a very long time. We see that Sherlock is absolutely enjoying himself. He says, "I haven't the foggiest notion who did it and why. I don't quite believe him." And He said they provided me with the most exquisite mystery. I believe he knows, and I believe that's why he's gone to quite a bit of trouble to finding and meeting up with William before he's left and gone off on his merry ways. And he's gone to the effort of telling him this. Because he could have picked absolutely anybody else on the boat. He could have done it to anybody else. But he has circled in, and we know it's him. He's circled in, A, on the culprit, and B, he's found the one person who, he kind of interacted with very briefly on the boat. I believe that he knows it is William. He knows it's William, but he just can't prove it. I think he wasn't lying about the fact that he couldn't find anything. He just can't pin it on him, so he has no evidence to prove it's him. But he knows, deep down and in his heart of hearts, he knows, guys. Sherlock compares the feeling he gets when he's solving a case to a maths problem. So he tries to link it to William, where he goes, it's like solving a maths problem. That's where the fun is. It's trying to show that the two are quite similar with the excitement they feel. We do get the William Moriarty smirk. As he excuses himself, he has one last thing to say. What is your name? And what is your favourite colour? No. He says, what is your name? And he goes, Holmes. And there's a pause, and we get that kind of Moriarty smirk again, and there's a gorgeous shot of his eyes. Sherlock Holmes. The name's Bond, guys. James Bond. I love it. I absolutely love it. Next week, we are getting a study in S Act 1, which got me very, very excited because I have read A Study in Scarlet, and I know what happens in at least part 1. I can definitely remember part 1 more than part 2. Yes, the book itself is in 2 parts. The first part is the reminiscence of Watson. The second part is the Country of Saints, which makes me very excited because there is a shot of Watson on the screen. Very excited. We're about to be introduced to Watson officially on here. I'm very excited. So I'm guessing I didn't actually see Watson on the boat. Made it up, guys. Sorry. My bad. I just wanted to see him. That's all it was. So next week's episode, definitely going to be a Watson and Holmes little charade going on. We also do see a female character. I have 2 theories on who it could be because it is quite young. I initially thought it would be the housekeeper. I do not believe it is Mrs. Hudson at all. I don't think it's her. I think it's going to be, I can't remember, is it Mary? I think it might be Mary. Might be Mary. So we'll see how wrong I am next week. I don't think they're going to put Irene Adler in this. So I think we're probably going to see Watson's beloved. So very exciting for next week. Cannot wait. I actually read A Study in Scarlet, and as a Sherlock Holmes fan, and obviously it's been a very long time since I've read one, I'm very excited to see how much they incorporate from the book into this. Are they going to add little bits in? Are we going to be following that story? Does it show us what time period roughly we're dealing with in the Sherlock kind of timeline? So very excited for next week. I cannot wait. We had an absolutely fantastic episode. I think it wrapped up very excitingly. It's been a very good episode when it comes down to looking at techniques and actual more camera breakdowns. So this week I do feel like I've actually given you a proper breakdown, so I feel good. Sometimes I worry if I ramble. This week I feel like I've literally just covered what I've needed to cover. Cannot wait for next week. I am very excited. Also quite sad that we only have 5 episodes left, and the next episode is a 2-parter. So that will take us to episode 9. So we'll only have 3 left for whatever the grand finale of this part 1 of the season is. Of course, season 2 has been announced. It is coming out in July. So it's going to be a summer release for us. You can bet your bottom dollar, guys. I will definitely be coming back to break down the next 12 episodes that get thrown at us in 2021. But yes, make sure you guys are subscribed. If you have been enjoying my breakdowns, I know they're a little bit rough around the edges. Forgive me, I have not quite found a formula that works for me just yet. But if you are enjoying them, please do subscribe so you can be there when we talk about the next... face each other in 2021 and we can talk about the next season. I cannot wait. We can talk more Moriarty next year. Very excited that I don't have to wait too long for it. The channel, again, guys, if you're not familiar or if you have just found me, Monday, Tuesdays, we talk about Moriarty the Patriot. Absolutely fun. We'll definitely be joining you next week for the study in S. Tuesday, Wednesday, we have the 3rd season of The Golden Kamui. Absolutely fantastic 3rd season we are having. Really enjoying that one. Wednesday morning, Ikebukuro Westgate Park. It's taken me 7 episodes now to try getting that correct. I can finally say it, but to the degree that I'm happy with my pronunciation. Wednesday, Thursday, we have Noodles. And then Friday/Saturday, depending on where you are in the world, is The Journey of Elena. The next period, winter 2021, I could finally say 2021. Hopefully next year will be so much better. Winter period itself looking a little bit on the light side. I at least have 3 things I want to talk about and release next year. So next year, that sounds so weird. I have 3 things I've kind of narrowed down. I might go back through the list a little bit closer to me releasing an actual video on the channel, just to kind of double down on what I'm going to do YouTube-wise. So make sure you guys are subscribed for that. I will see you again next week. Hopefully you guys are staying safe. See you again. Bye-bye, guys.